My name is Elizabeth Ann Benesh. I am a World War II veteran. Well, I started out from knitting, learning to knit, and at that time, England would send a yarn to the United States and ask people to knit sweaters for their soldiers. So I knit sweaters for the soldiers, and after I did that for a while, then I guess I must have, started thinking, well, why don't I join on with it? That was before we got into the war. And then when we got into the war, of course, everybody's doing everything for us, but at that time they were sending yarn to us. A girlfriend and I, we started talking about it. Well, we decided we were going to join the service. Well, we went to take our exams, and she couldn't pass the physical. But someone said, hey, maybe the Coast Guard. So we went to the Coast Guard, and they took us. They took our pictures and put us on the front page. So we really, we really thought we were something. We went to Palm Beach, Florida, at the Coast Guard base there, and that's where we did our basic training. I think it was about 12 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. We had inspection every Saturdays, and they found one hair in my hairbrush, and the whole floor was quarantined. It was time to go out for liberty. And of course, everybody hated you at that point. But I think they kept us maybe 2-3 hours before we could go. But every Saturday, we would stay. We had Lyle stockings. I don't know if you know what. It's a cotton stocking, and you stood at attention by your booth, and all of the girls were polishing the shoes on the back of their legs before the officers came in. But they always had officers come in and run their fingers over this stuff. But I think that helped me be I have to have things in order. Everything has to be just so. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Evidently, they would think there was a ship in the ocean in Florida where it didn't belong. And we would then end up in the hallway with the lights off and sitting in the halls sometimes at night and get a notice, to not evacuate, but to go on into the halls. It was like a fire drill. And we'd all just go and sit in the hall until we were given the clear to go. And the storekeeper school was like any business school. Back then, of course, they didn't have computers, but we had comptometers. It was in the Biltmore Hotel, but I was at a desk most of the time. I know it was hard. I remember it was hard because there was this little girl from Alaska, and lights out were out at 10 o'clock. Well, she was helping all of us, and we'd go in the bathroom and put a towel along the floor because when you're on, there was someone on duty every night to watch everybody. Well, we'd put a towel on the bathroom door bottom so that we could study, and she wouldn't know we were studying. So I became with the classification of a storekeeper, and I was connected with a supply depot. It was interesting because I started out at Charleston, South Carolina, as the 5th Naval District headquarters. And I started in the office. I was working in the office with payroll. Well, then in Charleston, the offices at that time were downtown in a big building. Well, the Coast Guard base had a big base right on the waterway, and they needed people to work in the office there. So then my girlfriend and I, we were transferred down to the base. And what we did was the air sea rescue ships were all coming in there. The ships would send in their orders to us. And then the men, we'd have to do all the paperwork. We made the invoices out for what they would take out to the bigger ships. I lived out what they call quarters. They did when we first went there, the Coast Guard. We were in the Navy. See, during the war, the Coast Guard becomes part of the Navy, and we were at the Navy base. We lived through a hurricane. Well, we were the next street over from the battery. And we were in our bunks, and we could actually feel our bunks. We were in a home, a big home that they take up. And then one of the big ships came in, and it was swept right up against the harbor and stuck on the rocks. That was during the hurricane. I mean, but I think that probably was the most exciting thing we did, because we were like working in an office. I mean, your hours were certain hours, and we were allowed, if your reputation was good and everything, it would select you, and you could go out on quarters, and the government would pay for it. And the people were renting rooms to the military. Well, my girlfriend and I had rented this room. Well, then it got to a point where we would have a little apartment, so we rented this little apartment, and it was close to the base. But it was really calm. I mean, as far as my part of it, I think toward the end the girls were going overseas, and I sometimes regret that I didn't stay in, because a few people did. I came home and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I went to night school, business college, and I decided that I would come to Chicago and go to school to become an X-ray technician. Well, I started the school, and the people that I lived with went to this little neighborhood grocery store. I went with her, and I met this nice young man whose mother owned the store, and he was he had gotten out of the service, and he was going to school, and that was how I met my husband. So I've done so many things in my life. I mean, I have had an interesting life. Having lived as long as I have, I've seen so much